Hey guys, I'm going to give you a recap of the first stop of the FLW Pro Circuit event on Sam Rayburn. To start with me, I've never been to Sam Rayburn before. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to pre-practice for that event. It's a big body of water, it's a big reservoir, so we're given 3 days of official practice to learn the lake. That's not a lot of time for a lake that size with that much local knowledge on that lake as well. A lot of these guys have one cast spots, and you'll see in the results that really played a factor for sure. It was hard to get on something that would consistently give you fish without a few of those little one cast spots. But basically, I'm going to show you a little clip right now of the biggest fish I caught of the entire event. Was actually in pre-fish. Of course, it was day one of pre-fish. It was caught on a blade bait like this one here, the lunker hunt blade bait. So basically, what I found was there was not a lot of hydrilla in the lake. In previous years, there's been a lot more. So what I found when I did get into some hydrilla, I was getting bites, and more specifically, I found isolated clumps to be the best. So this fish here is actually a 6.5 pounder that I catch on the blade bait, and it was on an isolated clump of hydrilla that was just outside of a bit of a hydrilla field, if you will. I actually found it on my Humminbird side imaging, and then I used my Humminbird 360 to pinpoint it, cast on it, and within a couple casts with that blade bait, she loaded into it. I thought that was a pretty good sign. From that point on, kept looking for more isolated clumps of hydrilla, and I would throw either a lipless rattle bait in there, which is really popular on Rayburn, or a blade bait, or even a soft plastic stick bait like the Lunker Hunt lunker stick. So I was getting bit, and I really figured that my best chance to get a limit in this event each day was to stay in this hydrilla. The other way that you can fish on Rayburn is to find these offshore 20 to 25 foot deep one cast spots, and that could be one rock or one stump, stuff like that, and that's what a lot of these local hammers do. Shout out to all the guys that got that going. But yeah, so basically that was my one and only good fish in practice. Then at the very end of practice, I got into, I just idled into a bay. Again, I'm on the hunt for hydrilla. A lot of bays you go into had no hydrilla. So I was just going in and out looking for it, using my Humminbirds for the most part. I cruised into this one bay, and it was just loaded with bait. And I hadn't seen that yet, that much bait packed into one bay. So I picked up my crankbait, I took a few casts, and boom, right away, catch a 2.5, and then boom, another 2 pounder. And I looked down, I was actually on a brush pile. So it was a brush pile, bait, fish, everything you could imagine. So I thought, that's a good, maybe a good way to catch some schoolers, you know, maybe get a quick limit is what my thought was. And that, I literally found that in the last 15 minutes of practice. We had to be off the water by 6. I found that at like 5:45 p.m. So here we are, day one, my first FLW Pro Circuit event, brought to you by Tackle Warehouse. I don't have a very good number. I'm down in the 100s to start, so I figured my strategy was, I knew I wouldn't get to that good area of hydrilla first. I did know that area that I wanted to start on, where I caught the 6.5 pounder, was a bit of a community hole. I could just tell from practice there's a lot of guys around. So I figured having a later start, blast off number, I think it was about 125 or something like that, I would check out that brush pile that had all that bait around that. Didn't think many people would find that, and if they're still there, I could get a quick limit. So I start there, and I'll show you a clip right now of actually my first fish. I did catch a fish on it. It was pretty neat. I was using, again, my Humminbird 360 to find the brush pile. So first thing, as soon as I came off plane, I idled in, I noticed right away bait was gone. And that happens. Bait swims, it moves. So I was a little bit bummed. I was really looking forward to that bait. I think the bait was key to getting those quick fish in practice. But still, I know there's brush piles there, and there's a good chance those fish are going to stay there. So you'll see here in the video, my Marshall's actually up in the front with me, and the reason he's up there, I was actually giving him a tutorial of how to use the Humminbird 360. He's interested in purchasing one, so I was pointing down and I was saying, yeah, here's the brush pile, you can see it here. So then I picked up the big 10-inch worm, That's a staple down in the south. And one of my first casts with that worm, I was actually talking to my marshal and I felt the tick. So you'll see him run, and I told him to, oh, look out. And set hook into him, and it was a nice fish. It ended up being my biggest of the day. It kind of led me down a false path. I really thought there was more maybe in that bay. That ended up being the only fish I caught there. I did, however, get stripped by one. I had another bite in that brush pile. And that was kind of it for me. So now, I got one fish. Now I'm gonna go to my hydrilla. Moving around, I was throwing that blade bait a lot. I catch a couple fish in the blade bait, and then I started throwing. I found I was getting pretty well on the jerk bait, and this would be not right in the hydrilla, but just outside. So I throw the jerk bait. It's a really good largemouth technique for wintertime fish. This is a Lunker Hunt Sushi 110. It suspends, has a little bit of purple, which I really like in the south, especially that time of the year. So you'll see actually on this clip here, I get a keeper fish, which I didn't realize at the time until I watched the footage after. It was my first cast on this hydrilla edge with the jerkbait, and he crushed it. I really thought it was bigger than it was. It ended up being just a keeper, but he was barely hooked. You see, I played it pretty hard. That was pretty much it for me. It was a really tough day. I weighed in 3 fish on day 1 for, I don't know, 6.5 pounds. So day 2 comes, I made up my mind that I am going to just focus on that hydrilla. I do believe those fish are in there. There's a lot of boats on their heads, so I figured if I can find my little 1 cast spot within that hydrilla, I should be able to get 5 fish. And what I noticed from the day before was I had one ditch where I actually had 2 bites, and it was the only place I got 2 bites back and forth. You know, obviously I waypoint almost every fish I catch, so it was like boom, boom, two bites. One was a non-keeper, one was a keeper. So I figured I'm gonna milk this area. So sure enough, I get in there, throw in my blade bait, and it takes a little while, but I load into a nice, you'll see it here, a nice 3-pounder. What I'm doing, if you watch my action of the blade bait, is you gotta let that blade bait get into the grass and then rip it out, and then basically catch up on that slack and rip it out again. And it's hard. I have blisters on my hands, but almost every fish bites the second you rip it out and give it just a little bit of a break as you kind of wind up to rip it again, and you'll load into a fish. Yeah, I catch 2 almost back to back in the same little area doing the same thing. It for me. Weighed in 2 fish for, I don't know, 5.5 pounds. Disappointing for sure. I ended up finishing down in the 100s somewhere. I'm not really too sure where. Not the way I wanted to start my FLW Pro Circuit season, but I mean, it was a learning experience. I learned a ton. I'm really looking forward to the next few stops. I am truly enjoying myself down here. I'm meeting so many great people. Big shout out to John Cox for winning the event. I mean, the guy's a machine. There's a video out there of his pre-fish. He was sleeping in and just having a good time, and sure enough, he wins it. So kudos to him. Shout out to all the guys who did get them to go. Anyway, looking forward to the next stop. We're on Harris Chain in Florida. Starts on February 20th. Be sure to stay tuned for a pre-fish update on that one. Thanks, guys.